Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Charles Tabansi. I want to welcome you guys to another episode of the DREAMERSPRO show, where we cover everything from sports, hot topics, classic debates, entertainment, and when we give you guys the first perspective on things and how we see them. And today we have a very serious show for you guys. But before we get into it, please make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, if you want to follow me on Instagram, my name is Charles Tabansi. My handle is CTABANZ. If you want to follow the channel on Instagram, same name as the channel, DREAMERSPRO. And if you want today's full show before it comes out on YouTube, it is streaming for free on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We have that pinned in the comment section below. Let me just go ahead and get into this topic. As you guys know, we've been amongst the voices that have been coming out asking the question about why the media, we're talking about big media right now, we're not talking about independent creators, why the big media has been so quiet on the Josh Giddey situation. And as I'm thinking about this right now, as I'm talking about it, it caused me to think about something quite interesting. If you guys remember, when Draymond Green came into the independent media sector, he described himself as the new media. The old media was conventional media, people on television, but it seems like independent media is playing an important role in the media landscape in terms of covering stories that new media and old media are not talking about. And this really lies at the heart of this entire subject matter. Recently, Josh Giddey has been there's some stories circulating around the fact that he had an inappropriate relationship with a minor. And as it turns out, we now heard, according to TMZ Sports yesterday and other news publications, that the NBA and the police are currently conducting an investigation. We're now also hearing that the girl's family is refusing to cooperate with the police. So this is where we kind of stand with the story. And some of us out here have been asking the question, why isn't people like Malika Andrews and others covering this story? Why are we bringing up Malika Andrews? The reason we brought up Malika Andrews is because she has a history of constantly making it her business to cover controversial stories that involve black athletes. But whenever it pertains to white athletes, she's usually mute. We didn't hear her comment on Dana White's issue. We didn't hear her comment on Brett Favre's issue. But let something that's pertaining to a black athlete, let that news come out. She'll be one of the first people to go out there and talk about it. So what happened? I was recently on a short break, and on a Sunday, I decided to produce a show, actually in my hotel room, after the news broke. And I was saying we need to hear from Malika Andrews on this issue because we need to see that same moral consistency. And a lot of people were clamoring for her in particular to talk about it. It was all over Twitter and all of these different things, right? And then ultimately, Malika Andrews came out there and made a statement after she read something off of a teleprompter. So we got that. Then what happened? Yesterday, Stephen A. Smith released his show. And in one of his segments, he took it upon himself to come to the defense of Malika Andrews and question all of the people out there that have been asking for her to be public, to come out and talk about this issue, and questioning why so many of us actually want her to comment on the story. So for those of you who didn't hear what Stephen A. Smith had to say, I want to play it for you now, and then we're going to come back and continue on the show. Take a listen to what Stephen A. Smith had to say here.
Let me say that what I'm about to get into, I usually don't get involved with. I'm big on supporting my colleagues and protecting my colleagues, but in the same breath, I'm also big on minding my own damn business when it's called upon to do so. And I'm certainly not trying to deviate from that in this particular situation, but there's a subject that I think demands participation from people in this industry, including myself. And that is this subject that's involving ESPN host Malika Andrews. Now, for those of you who may not know, and it's very few in the sports world who don't know at this particular moment in time, she's been getting some major heat, in particular from former NFL wide receiver Dez Bryant for ignoring the situation involving or surrounding NBA player Josh Giddey of the Oklahoma City Thunder and the accusations of him having an inappropriate relationship with an underage girl. First things first, before I get even any further, let me tell you what Dez Bryant had to say. Let me read that quote to you right now. Dez Bryant tweets, Malika Andrews, You went out of your way to crucify Brandon Miller, the #2 overall pick of the Charlotte Hornets on draft day, over something he didn't even do, wrote Bryant. Why haven't you said nothing about Josh Giddey? I advise you not to make this a black or white thing. Your parents really raised you wrong, and just because you went to a private school don't make you better. You appeal, and I know you're kind. You're just a puppet. I don't know how a former or current NBA player could sit there across from you and look at you with some kind of respect. Let me say this. Des Bryant, I miss him. I miss Des Bryant because I loved watching him as a wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys for those 8 years he was there before he suffered that injury and came back and tried to resume his career in Baltimore, and that didn't work out. I respect you, my brother, but that was a bit extreme. You see, without trying to get too involved in it, I feel compelled to get involved because I think that a lot of people are missing the issue involving Josh Giddey to begin with. Josh Giddey is being investigated for allegedly messing with an underage girl. We don't know the facts. And because we don't know the facts, and we represent a network, we have to make sure I's are dotted and T's are crossed before we provide commentary to that. The investigation is ongoing by the NBA. The Oklahoma City Thunder refuses to comment on it. Josh Giddey refuses to comment on it. And as a result, all we can keep doing is reminding everybody the brother being investigated. He's from Australia. He's being investigated for messing with an underage girl. That's problematic. And the NBA is investigating because next thing you know, they may take some heat because people may be asking them, what are you going to do about it? If this was the National Football League, chances are he would be put on a commissioner's exempt list where he wouldn't be allowed to play until the investigation was complete. So getting on Malika Andrews about this, I believe, is off kilter. And it's a bit extreme. Bringing up her parents, her upbringing, some private school education. Come on, Des. What if she brought up your stuff? Come on, bro. It's not necessary. And the reason why this is a big subject to have is because I think that we need to do a better job of picking our battles. Malika Andrews is a colleague of mine. There's no question about that. We got into our little tussle on the air after the Ime Udoka situation, or as that was brewing. She came at me in a certain way. I checked the situation the way I felt it needed to be checked. We had a conversation. Later, she apologized. I accepted her apology because I'm a human being and I make mistakes too. But we got folks coming at her all the time with death threats and other threats and all of this stuff. Why? Why? Let's talk about Brandon Miller for a second. I wish this brother nothing but the best. He can play, by the way. Was a star at Alabama last year. No problem with that. He was the #2 overall pick on draft night. In the National Basketball Association, he was going to be the #2 pick of the Charlotte Hornets. The city of Charlotte is considered the Bible Belt. What was his crime? There was no crime because the police in Alabama said they had nothing to arrest him on. But what was later learned is that last year sometime, in February before February, he drove a car that had a gun in it that his teammate ultimately got out of the back seat, handed to somebody else, and they ended up killing a 23-year-old young lady who is the mother of a 5-year-old child. And those two individuals, his teammate, Brandon Miller's teammate, and the person that he handed the gun to, were arrested and indicted on capital murder charges. When Brandon Miller showed up in South Carolina, you'd have thought he was Hillary Clinton. They were screaming, lock him up, lock him up, lock him up. How in God's name does Malika Andrews not ask that question on draft night? She had to. I'm telling you, me or any other reporter that was in that situation has an obligation to ask a team, an NBA official, or somebody about that question. There's no wiggle room around it. If she hadn't asked that question, the bosses would have been wondering why she had that job. If I was sitting in her chair and I didn't ask that question, since after all he was the number 2 overall pick and he was getting drafted and all of this residue was just months removed, I would have been asked, why do I have my job? That goes for any journalist.
So you heard what Stephen A. Smith had to say. Let me tell you guys something. I was absolutely floored listening to Stephen A. Smith in this soundbite. When I was watching him live or watching him for the first time, I could not believe what I was hearing. As I was listening to this, I was saying to myself, what on God's green earth is Stephen A. Smith even talking about? Stephen A. Smith is very clever. He's very clever. What Stephen A. Smith is doing right now is he's found a very slick way to justify the fact that him and other people, Malika Andrews and others, are not discussing the Josh Giddey story. He brought up this thing of, you don't want to go out there and start stating facts that are wrong and speak in an accusatory tone. So he's found his way to finagle his way around that particular point, and that's really what he's holding on to. That's number one. Number two, he also found an interesting tactic of saying that the reason that Malika Andrews spoke on the Brandon Miller issue was because there were some public records and, this was reported and that was reported. And that's the reason that she did that. Forgetting that, some of us are savvy enough to see straight through that. What we were asking Stephen A. Smith to do, or in this case, Malika Andrews to do, was to talk about the story, report the story. A piece of information came out, talk about it. And what some of us were confused about was why they were making all of these excuses, in this case, Stephen A. Smith, as to why she did not do that. Now, the second part that really irked me was this. He said he doesn't understand why so many people were calling for Malika Andrews specifically to touch on this issue. And to that, I got to take the same tone that Stephen A. Smith takes with people. Have you been living under a rock? No, really. Have you been living under a rock? Are you not living on planet Earth? Were you not residing in the United States over the last, 2 years? Do you not know some of the criticism that have been aimed at in the direction of Malika Andrews? Do you not know why that is? Well, let me chronicle them for you. One of them was, during the Ime Udoka scandal, Malika Andrews took it upon herself to come on your show, who you invited her on, to basically talk about what she heard in the press conference of the Boston Celtics when they were talking about the suspension of Ime Udoka. She came on your show and she was fired up, without having all the facts, by the way. Without having all the facts. All she knew was what was said. And she went on your show to start to speak in a very accusatory tone against Ime Udoka, and then she tried to check you on your show for looking like you were trying to cover up for Ime Udoka's behavior by attacking the woman, and you had to push back on her. That's incident number one. Incident number two was when the Boston Celtics decided to suspend Ime Udoka and then look for a replacement. They went out there and got Joe Mazzulla, who they had agreed that they were going to sign anyway. The Malika Andrews goes on her show, Get Up, or whatever the hell that show's called. She goes out there and begins to point out some of the unsavory moments in Joe Mazzulla's youth. She did that. Then we get to the Brandon Miller incident. It's NBA draft night. He's going to be drafted. He wasn't charged with anything. To go back to the point about Josh Giddey, you're talking about he hasn't been charged. Was Brandon Miller charged of anything? I don't believe he was. He was not. He wasn't charged with anything the same way Josh Giddey wasn't, and she took it upon herself to bring up that incident that happened during his time in college. She brought that up. And then a story comes out about Josh Giddey involving a minor. And all people are saying is, where is your voice on this? Why aren't you reporting this story saying, hey, did you hear such and such happen with such and such player? This is what is happening so far. We're going to keep you updated when something else happens. And you're telling me you're wondering why people are asking for her to come out there and talk about it? I really don't understand what Stephen A. Smith is talking about right now. I really don't get it. Why are you there making all of these concessions for Malika Andrews when she's defending Josh Giddey? But I saw you make no such concessions for Kyrie, for Brandon Miller, for all these other athletes. Why is it now all of a sudden you're coming to her defense? Why didn't you stand up in the back and say, hey, Malika, why are you going after Brandon Miller? Why are you going after Joe Mazzulla? Why are you going after Ime Udoka? You would say, oh, in that case, she's doing her job. She was doing her job. And in this case, for her to bring up the story, she would not be doing her job. Man, Stephen A. Smith, you look weak on this particular subject. I just got to be honest with you. I don't work for Stephen A. Smith. I don't work for ESPN. I don't have to sit up here and twerk it up for nobody. I'm going to say what I think. I'm a 36-year-old grown man. I ain't going to be sitting up here twerking it up for no. You look very, very weak on this issue. You look bad sitting up there defending Malika. No, here's something you may consider doing in the future. Whenever you publish a piece of content, go through the comment section and read what viewers had to say about your thoughts. Go back and look at the show that you were talking about, the Des Bryant's comments and defending Malika. Go back and read through the comments of what almost no one agreed with you on your own show. These are people that tune in to watch your show. No one agreed with you. Most of them are up there talking about Stephen A. What is Stephen A. Smith talk? What are you talking? Why are you up here defending Malika? And this is what I'm trying to figure out. You're defending Malika Andrews harder than you defend Kyrie Irving. Then you defended Brandon Miller. Then you defended Ime Udoka. Why are you defending Malika Andrews of all people? You don't know why people are clamoring for. What do you mean you don't know? Where you live at? What you mean you don't know? Trying to make it seem like as if it's something that you can't comprehend. You know exactly why the reason people are pissed off with Malika Andrews. They feel like she has zero respect for black men. And whenever a black athlete does something, she's the first one to stand up and start hollering and screaming. And whenever the white athlete does it, no one can find her. That's what people think. And for you to say you don't understand that is beyond me. It's beyond me. It's absolutely beyond me. I'm not feeling her. I'm sorry. She's your co-worker, whatever the hell. We not feeling her. Because how she be acting. And you got to ask yourself the question, why did ESPN ask Malika Andrews to put out a statement? It means that they must know what everybody else knows, which you seem not to know. They know why they had to get her to talk, because she's always the first one up there running her mouth whenever something bad happens with a black athlete. And you got Dave McMenamin up there writing about some damn Russell Westbrook was a vampire in the Lakers locker room. I never heard that get said about Russell Westbrook anywhere else. So why did he all of a sudden turn into a vampire when he got to the Lakers? Malika Andrews is cool with that. Man, please. You talking about you don't understand why people are coming after her. Des Bryant went too far. He ain't go far enough. These are my thoughts. Whatever you guys think, please leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section. We catch you on the next show. Peace.